So now we're ready to make our candle. So the first thing that you want to do is to go ahead and center your wicks. They do have wick centering tools, which will be located in your supply list if you do want to purchase. So once you've done this for all of the candles that you're going to make, you can go ahead and set your jar to the side. Now we're ready to mix our fragrance blend. So for this class, I am using the fragrance Sangria and Magnolia Blossom. Both are from the Flaming Candle Company. At this point, we've already used the CandlePal app to calculate how much fragrance oil we need for our candle. So here you see me basically dividing that number by 2 since I'm using 2 different fragrance oils to make sure my mixture is even, and using my scale to measure those fragrances out. So once I've finished measuring out my fragrance oil, one trick that I like to do is mixing those 2 oils together first. Now, some people will pour the wax first and then add the oil. It's something about when I mix the 2 fragrances together first and then add it in the wax, I get the best hot and cold throw every single time. So once I've done that, I go ahead and reset my scale to 0 and I'm ready to add my wax in. Now, when you're adding your wax, you want to make sure the wax is at a temperature of 180 degrees. If you add the wax at anything lower than that, it will not bind with the oil correctly, and you unfortunately would have to start over. So make sure your wax is at 180 degrees before you pour. Now we're ready to stir our mixture. Now for me, I feel like the key to a great candle having a great cold and hot throw is how long you stir. The longer you stir, the better the bind. So for me, in my candles, I usually do about 2 minutes each time. If you are a previous candle maker taking this class, please let me know how this works for you in comparison to a shorter time. Once you've allowed your mixture to cool, you want to grab your thermometer and check the temperature of the wax. If the wax is 130 degrees or less, it is time to pour. You do want to be careful though, because sometimes as a candle maker, it's easy to forget, and then it ends up being harder, and of course, you can't pour at that point. It is okay to place your mixture on a heat plate to remelt the wax so it is loose enough for you to pour. You do want to make sure you watch this though, because you are not trying to reheat the wax. You just want to melt it a little bit. You do not want to make it 180 degrees again or even 130, because at this point it should have already cooled down. If you do overheat it, you have a chance of burning out the fragrance oil altogether and you end up having a candle that you can't smell. Now, when pouring the wax, you do want to make sure you pour slow enough to reduce the amount of air bubbles in the top of your candle or within the candle. Now, if you've been following me on TikTok, you know that I do not use wick centering tools at all. I literally pull the wick over into the center once the candle has cured just a little bit. I did end up going back off camera to make sure it was a little bit more centered, but you guys get the point. Once your candle has solidified, it will look like this. Most candle makers at this point will notice that we have a little bit of separation from the jars. That is okay. That is normal. Most of us just put a label over it, honestly. At this point, we're going to get our heat gun to re-smooth out the top of our candle, because remember, we moved our wick over. So, of course, that caused the top of the candle to look a little weird. You want to make sure you remelt the entire top of the candle. Otherwise, you're going to see different dents in the top, and the goal is to have a completely smooth top. The last step is to trim your wick. When trimming your wick, you want to make sure you leave a little bit of room for your customer to then trim the wick again once they receive it, because in your candle care card, you should be having instructions on how to care for the candle. So if they are following it when they get the candle, they're going to trim the wick. So if you've already done that, it's going to be too short.